Henri is revving up off the southeast coast of the United States. Hurricane warnings up for most of Long Island and southern New England. Tropical storm warnings for the western part of Long Island, and a tropical storm watch for New York City and areas just to the west and south. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Joe and Joe Weather Show on this Friday, the 20th of August. Normally, Joe and I are off on Fridays, but obviously that's not the case tonight. The Joe and Joe Weather Show brought to you by Omni True Value Hardware at 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon, New York, on Long Island. We do have one more day before we have to deal with this, so just in case you need to get some last-minute emergency preparedness supplies, head over to Omni tomorrow morning at 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon. 631-756-1125 is the phone number. The website is omnitruevalue.com. And Wholesale Holiday Lighting by Giannini, your complete holiday lighting specialist, meeting all your decorating needs. Halloween is coming soon enough, and Christmas follows after that, whether you want your home decorated or you might want to do this as part of your own business. They're at 162 Ocean Avenue in Lindenhurst, New York, 631-957-5106. And the website there is liholidaylighting.com. So we draw a day closer, Mr. Rayo, another day of dancing models in one direction or another, a few scary runs on some models trying to take a track up into New York Harbor or even into the northeastern corner of Monmouth County in New Jersey. What are your thoughts?
My thoughts are that you would have thought by 2021, the year that we are all now living in, you would have thought that by this time we would have computer models that could, within 24 to 48 hours of a potential landfalling hurricane, could get all of their acts together, get on the same page, and more or less forecast what or where a storm is going to go. And actually, Joe, this is the utter massive confusion, the rumors that are going out all about on social media. Oh, I saw a map that says it's going toward Tom's River. Oh, I saw another map that says it's going to go right toward New York City. Oh, I saw one that said it was going to miss Long Island entirely and stay just out east and head toward Cape Cod. Blah, 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 blah. And I want to tell you, I'm getting sick and tired of all of this. I would have thought when I got into this business more than 40 plus years ago that these kind of situations, which plagued us so much back in the 70s and 80s, would be just a thing of the past by 20 years into the 21st century.
And
but
it's only
like
gotten
anything
worse.
Else, it's only gotten worse. Here we are. We're less than 48 hours from a potential landfalling storm, but we've got so many, the best thing I was able to do today was I able to look and say to myself, all right, we've got to pick out what the outliers are going to be. But everything was split right down the middle. We had the GFS, the European, the NAM 12 kilometer, all saying more or less up across eastern Long Island and into Connecticut. And then you have models like the Canadian Global, the German Icon model, the NAM 3 kilometer. Even I looked at the HRRR, for goodness sake, and your friendly neighborhood Futurecast, the RPM model. All of those models are taking the storm and, hey, why don't we go to New York? Like that. So you know what, Joe? I just put all of my money down on the GFS, the NAM 12, and the European. Made a consensus map up, made a forecast based upon those three models. And as my friend and your friend too, Pete Bergman, another meteorologist, said, God help us all if the outliers turn out to be right.
Well, and the thing is, when you look at the hurricane tracking models, which I'll show in a little while when I bring the map up, it's exactly what you. There's a bunch that were concentrated in and around New York Harbor, northeast New Jersey, westernmost Long Island. Then there's a gap, and then you got a bunch of them concentrated over eastern Long Island, the eastern half of Long Island, and yeah, I didn't really get anything new out of today. that we didn't that we weren't struggling with yesterday. So I'm kind of thinking. I just sort of decided that the track should be something where it basically splits Long Island in half, maybe favoring more a landfall on the eastern side versus the western side, and with the little asterisk, that little footnote there that says subject to change without notice. I mean, it's horrible to be in that position. If you're in a spot where you pretty well know you're going to be east of it or you're going to be west of it, you can figure things out. But when you're in that there's a zone right now still that fluctuates a little bit either way, it's going to make a big difference to anybody who lives in that zone. So we will. Hopefully tomorrow they're all sitting on top of each other in terms of the track, and maybe the spread will be about 10 miles, and you only have to worry about a handful of people who may or may not be on the right or the left side or whatever it is. Let me just really quick, we've got 2 early super chat hits, and I want to acknowledge them. Robert Russo, thank you very much for the super chat hit, and guess good luck this weekend, he says. I guess that's for us and for everybody else. And also Londonberg fam, new to the chat board. Thank you very much for hitting super chat tonight, and welcome aboard. By the way, I did not put a poll up tonight. I just figured at this point we kind of all have pretty well figured out that there is going to be a landfall somewhere in the Northeast. So hard to imagine all of a sudden a sharp right turn and out to sea. Given the prospects.
And to compound the problem, it's not enough anymore in this society or this time that we live in. It's not enough to just simply have 2 computer model runs at 0Z and 12Z. You have to now confuse the issue by putting up a 6 and an 18Z intermediate run, and those runs only confuse it even more. Case in point, the GFS. The GFS had this storm system coming straight across eastern Long Island, up into Connecticut, up into the Connecticut River Valley, and then gently curving away to the north and east. That was the 12Z run. Now the 18Z GFS coming out, and it goes, again, across Long Island, but guess what? Now left. It curves all the way over into the Hudson Valley. Yeah. Then does a loop-de-loop, and then finally exits off to the north and east. And I just looked at...
This is all because of that upper low. This is all because of that upper low. If we had a simple deep trough,
because of that building ridge of high pressure, which is doing its best to say, hey, you ain't going anywhere. Yeah. And literally building up and pushing the darn thing over back to the upper low. It's like, here, you take this. I don't want it.
Yeah, no, it's exactly correct. It's both those. Those are this particular event with Henri is rather unique in its setup when you think about it, because it's hard for me to remember when we had a situation like this where we have an upper low that is pulling it northward, fighting against a strong ridge up in eastern Canada that's basically creating that brick wall to keep it from going out to the east. This is an unusual situation, and I guess that's certainly being reflected by how the models are not handling this very well at all. But what can you do? MJM Tree Service hitting super chat, as well as Chuck Cardillo tonight hitting super chat. Thank you, both of you, for doing so. And MJM, reach out to me if you need any extra help, just so you know. Okay, and thanks again. So let's. All right, you got the sharing mode on you, so if you're ready, you want to go ahead and show what you're doing here. We can go ahead.
Oh, all right. Well,
and while you set that up, Ryan Ford, thank you for the super chat hit. Thank you, and I will talk to you later. Okay, thank you for the super chat hit. Oh boy. Very generous of you, extremely generous of you. Go ahead, Joe. I'm sorry. You got your maps ready, or you're loading?
No, I'll show you what I came up with. I posted it on my my Facebook page.
By By the way,
And
this is I want this to make this clear. This is not a hand drawn. This is actually a high tech graphic that Joe makes on the computer, and he's so good that he makes it look like it's a hand drawn map. You know,
I think it's so good that I actually draw the hurricane symbol backwards.
Yes, exactly. All right,
Yeah,
I'm going to try to make this a little bigger on the screen. So I'm going to stretch it out a little bit here. Let's see what we come up with. Just to make it a tad larger. Okay, it's about as big as I can make it. So your turn.
Well, there's not much to say. This is based on a consensus of the of this afternoon's 12Z run of the GFS, the 12 kilometer NAM or North American model, and the European model. These, Joe, are the three most, I dare I say, reliable, but the three most potent and best or short to mid-range models that we can work with. I understand that, we have a lot of fans of the Canadian global model, and some people have even become attracted to the German icon model and a few others. But this model, this consensus model, shows the storm coming our way. Let me just see if I can make this big. Oh, no, that's much too big. I'm going to go back. So here's my consensus position for Saturday morning. By tomorrow morning, this certainly should be a hurricane. We are 5 miles shy of hurricane force right now, just a little below a minimal category 1. And I think based upon the pressure readings, the projected pressures for Henri for Saturday night, that probably Saturday evening will be when the storm will reach its peak in terms of intensity, anywhere from 75 to maybe even as high as 95 miles an hour. I know the Hurricane Center is not going anywhere near that in terms of strength, but the water temperatures here across the Gulf Stream are quite warm and quite conducive to pumping up a hurricane, which loves warm water. However, there's a very sharp edge right about here where you go from very warm to all of a sudden much cooler water. And I think that once the hurricane moves across that boundary zone after midnight tomorrow night, it's going to start noticeably diminishing. However, if it does get up to like 80, 85, dare I say maybe even 90 miles an hour sometime tomorrow evening, I don't think it's going to drop off fast enough prior to a landfall. So I think that we will be dealing either with a minimal hurricane or maybe a very potent tropical storm when it does make landfall. And the projection here is somewhere around the Twin Forks area of Long Island, sometime in the midday hour, late morning, early afternoon hour of Sunday. Then, of course, as all hurricanes do, or tropical systems do when they move over land, they very quickly get the wind knocked out of them, although this time, in this case, maybe it'll hold on to tropical storm strength, not only through Sunday evening, but maybe even on into the wee hours of Monday morning. And then eventually it makes the right-hand turn to the northeast as nothing more than a post-tropical system moving across Maine by later in the day on Monday. And as we've said before, the heaviest winds, the strongest winds are generally to the right or to the east of the storm track, which means the folks who live in Rhode Island, eastern Long Island perhaps, central and eastern Massachusetts, and on up maybe even into lower New England, New Hampshire, might be in for some very squally, gusty winds, maybe in excess of 50 or 60 miles per hour, which could bring down power lines and trees. Meantime, the wetter part of the storm usually is on the left, which means that we may be looking at 2 to 3, maybe 3 to 5, or maybe even 6 inches. That's certainly not out of the question, especially if we mix in a little convection for places across central, back to maybe western Long Island, and even in New York City, Joe. I did a little bit of research, and storms like Bob in 1991 and Belle and Gloria, those storms dropped a good 2 or even almost 3 inches of rain on New York, even though they were well to the east. So why not? Why not say that that will be the case for New York on Sunday, at least early in the day. The question is, when does the heavy rain move in? I think it'll be after midnight and toward daybreak on Sunday morning. And I wouldn't even be at all surprised if in the afternoon the rain suddenly let up quite a bit, if not even quit for a while. And I wouldn't even be surprised, Joe, dare I say, that maybe even a little bit of sunshine might break through the clouds later in the day for parts of the area on Sunday, even with a hurricane or tropical storm very close by. So
yeah, it's
that's what I came up with for Sunday.
It's 6 to 8 hours of rough stuff, and I agree. There will be, once the center moves in, I don't know how much is going to be on the south side. We've seen that happen before a number of times, where the center goes by, and on the south side you have just basically, clouds and gusty winds and the occasional shower and not much more. So I'm on the same page with you on that. If we use noontime as a time for landfall, or 1 o'clock in the afternoon, right, the rain may shut off. I think the rain amounts are going to depend on whether this upper low complicates things, because if you do wind up getting the upper low gets involved, and you get the surface center just does some sort of weird loop, as you indicated that the new GFS shows, and the icon has been showing for a while. And if that comes to be part of the equation, there will be, I think, some interesting rainfall amounts on the west side of this. And it's not impossible that you could get something weird happen over somebody, that the upper low sits there and the surface low rotates around it, where they get many inches of rain. It's hard to make a specific case for a specific spot at this point, but I've been talking back and forth with Timothy Veltman, and in instances like this, it often turns out that they get rain and even some gusty winds clear up to the Albany area in upstate New York. So this is something that we're certainly going to have to, take into account when we see how this track is going, and whether there's hook to the left and the upper low, and whether there's some looping that gets involved. Before you get on to this map, Joe, let me just say really quick. Let me just thank Keith James II. With a super chat hit. Thank you so much for hitting the tip jar, Keith James II. Will there be an eye on landfall? If it comes in as a minimal hurricane, I would probably think not. Maybe one tries to form while it's offshore and strengthens, but I would bet you that if it's on a weakening trend as it approaches landfall, you'll probably see that eye fill in rather quickly. Frank Riccio hitting super chat. Also, I don't know if I got you, Frank, on a thank you before. If I did, you get thanked twice. But thank you very much, and hopefully I got everybody here hitting the super chat button tonight. All right, so now you've got the what is it? The 10-meter wind here, or this is the precip. The relative humidity.
Right, the 700 to 400 millibar relative humidity, and the aquamarine, if I may use that term to describe the bluish kind of color, that indicates clouds, and also the deeper the shade, the more likely you're looking at areas of rain and precipitation. The white and especially the brownish areas indicating thin breaks in the clouds, or even with brown, more like mainly sunny conditions. And I want to show you what this profile looks like. And by the way, this is not the 18Z run of the GFS. This is the 12Z run that I based my map on. And I want to show you here what happens. This is as of 0Z tomorrow night. This is 8 o'clock in the evening on Saturday. Now here's 2 o'clock in the morning on Sunday. And you could see they have a very potent pressure, 972 millibars. I think that's on the order of something like 28.8 inches of mercury. That is a very significant storm. It's still a Category 1, but it's still quite significant. And notice, if you will, how dark the shades of aquamarine or blue are right around, almost concentric, right around the storm's center. Now we get to 8 a.m. on Sunday, the storm, and again, this is now to the south of Montauk Point. And Joe, you mentioned about you don't know how much is available once the center passes, sweeping up from the south. Well, here we go to 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And 2 o'clock in the afternoon, look at this now. If this is correct, the storm is making landfall, a second landfall perhaps, from Long Island Sound to about New London, Connecticut. But look at this now. To the south of the storm, we have white and even a few shades of light brown. And that's why I say that possibly after the storm passes, don't be surprised if, especially if you live out on eastern Long Island, that the sun does break through the clouds during the afternoon hours. And look at this. When we get to 8 o'clock in the evening on Sunday, I should say, 8 p.m. Sunday, all of this white and light brown again, moving into parts of Connecticut, Rhode Island. It's quite possible that the folks who are in the direct path of the storm may actually see a lot of wind and a lot of rain, but also a bit of clearing after the storm center passes on by. We here in the tri-state New York area seem to stay in the aquamarine or dark blue right on through the course of the day. And take a look. I mean, this you talk about your spiral band. Look at this thing. That is a spiral band, ladies and gentlemen, right there, if that would have panned out. But it looks like, Joe, we've got an interesting situation coming up again for Sunday. And again, I think that the worst of this is going to be Sunday morning through midday, and that by the time we get to Sunday afternoon and evening, we should actually see some let up in the wind and the rain. And again, for folks out east, maybe even a little bit of sunshine putting in a cameo appearance.
It's interesting how you get that, that arm of RH that comes in from deep out in the Atlantic and crosses over central New England and wraps all the way around on the west side. But you see what happens here with these as they move up the coast. You get the character change as the non-tropical influences start to get involved, where the rain begins, the heavy rain shifts to the west side, the strongest surface winds shift over to the east side. Carl White's hitting super chat now. Thank you. I appreciate all the tip jar hits, folks. Most appreciated indeed. Thank you. And
take a look, Joe. Take a look. Here's that, as I just mentioned, here's that arm, right? Follow the arm, so to speak, or the spiral band.
Right.
I mean, look at this. This is still maintained all the way up into Sunday evening, all the way into early Monday morning, if you want to believe this now. And then what appears to happen is that there might be actually a second surge of rain or cloud cover that moves through during the day on Monday or later Monday. And then after that, look at that. In comes the clearing. And Tuesday and beyond, look at all that dark brown. That looks like a lot of sunshine. It still is going to be rather humid. I just hope that folks who might end up out of power don't end up out of power for very long, because if it's longer than a few days, it's back to sunny and oppressively humid conditions, it would appear, for Tuesday on through a good part of next week, behind what is left of Henri as he moves up and away.
By the way, interesting how in August tropical systems are, I guess we might define them as being much more tropical than, say, September tropical systems, in the sense that when they're up here, when we have to deal with them, in the sense that almost always when you get a tropical system in September, particularly in the latter part of the month, you get humidity relief and cooler air on the backside, because there's almost always the north is involved. Whereas opposed to this time of year, you're still you just came off the summer peak in terms of the solar heating and everything else. The north is there's not a lot here in the north. There's nothing in the northern stream that's getting involved, which begs goes right to the point about how unusual this is, with that ridge up in the northwest Atlantic and into eastern Canada, and this weak upper low that is forming right now in southern Ohio and in West Virginia. Just too bad we can't get the humidity relief, because it would be nice. Why don't we go to? Let me go back to the satellite loop first, because there are a couple of things I want to point out very quickly, because we really haven't been paying too much attention to Grace, primarily because it's not going into the U.S. We probably would be paying more attention to it if I'll just bring it up on the picture. I'll bring it up a little bit higher if Henri weren't around. But Grace right now is strengthening as well. And both Grace and Henri, if you look closely, you're starting to see the feathering of the clouds in the outflow. And usually when you see the feather, on both systems, and usually when you see that feathering, it either is undergoing strengthening, or in the case of Henri, is just about getting ready to. Now, there's an Air Force reconnaissance aircraft that's flying in there right now. It's not quite to the center yet, so they haven't, I don't have anything closed off, and I don't have a pressure report at the moment, but we'll check on it a little bit later on. And Weather asking about whether we might still see models shift around to the west. I think we're probably going to see a few, on the tonight's cycle and tomorrow's cycle, because of the fact that you're dealing with this odd scenario. You're probably still going to see some model fluctuations. It would not at all surprise me. They haven't achieved consensus yet. I don't know why they would suddenly start to do it now. Kathy McKee, welcome to the channel. Wind speeds to the west of the Twin Forks, and that's a good question, because oftentimes when these things are moving, the winds on the west side, the winds on the west side are definitely going to be weaker than the winds on the east side. That's not to say that there can't be some strong gusts, but in terms of the sustained winds, on the west side, particularly as you go into western Suffolk and get into Nassau County, they will be less than they will be on the east side. I would think the hurricane force sustained winds will be mostly east of the center. And Johnny Quest banging the soup jar, the super chat tip jar tonight. Also, tornado. Now, here's an interesting question, Joe. Is there? Oftentimes we see with these things, especially down south, you see tornado watches go up, or at least SPC puts up a marginal risk for severe weather. I don't know. I think they might. I think they may put that in there.
Well, it's all subjective. It's one. It's one, and sometimes, it's just one this time around. I forgot the gentleman's name, the forecaster who just brushed the entire Northeast on Sunday with general thunderstorm coverage, and that caught me by a bit of surprise. I was expecting at least an area of marginal near or the projected landfall area for Henri, and there isn't. But I think there might be one added tomorrow as they get to thinking more and more about this. And we've seen that. You're right, Joe. Landfalling hurricanes usually are heralded and accompanied by a zone of possible tornadic weather, or at least the potential for, let's say, a tornado watch. So don't be surprised. It's not yet, out there on SPC, and I don't proclaim to be a hurricane or even a severe weather expert like those at NOAA who have various divisions in various fields. I've always said that in terms of meteorology and forecasting, I'm just a GP, a general practitioner. But I did think that we would see something alluding to tornadic activity or severe weather with the landfalling storm on Sunday. And that still may, again, happen. The Sunday is day 3, and tomorrow it'll be day 2. And certainly there's still plenty of time for them to box out or to stripe out a particular region of the Northeast and say, hey, chance for marginal risk, or maybe even they'll jump and say a chance of severe weather, period. I remember a few cases. One of them was Hurricane David back in 1979 when they put up a tornado watch for much of Long Island, New York, and down into the Pennsylvania area, out ahead of the landfalling or the remnants of what was once Hurricane David here in our part of the country. So, I would say, Johnny, I think that there is that possibility that we may see at least a couple of rumbles of thunder and some thunderstorm activity on on Sunday. And it may very well be that they'll, after thinking this over a little bit more, possibly make a zone of marginal or maybe slight risk for severe weather and possible tornado weather for us Sunday morning.
All right, so on the 8 o'clock advisory from the Hurricane Center, it is at Henri is at 31.6 and 73.8 west, so it almost got to 74 west. That's really important here in terms of a more westerly track. If this were sitting at 71 or 2 and starting its northerly motion, we might be having a different conversation tonight. But the fact that it's almost to 74 degrees west, that's important in terms of how the final track is going to evolve. And you can see the Hurricane Center. It's amazing how far left they've come from being east of 70 to along 70 to just west of 70, and now they're about halfway through the box. They have it as a hurricane just as it's approaching the south shore of Long Island. The red is a hurricane warning. Watches continue for southeastern New England. We've got the warnings up for southern New England for most of Long Island. The blue is Nassau County, southwestern Connecticut, Westchester County, and I think even into the Bronx. We've got tropical storm warnings up. And the little slab of yellow that they painted is for the Jersey side of New York Harbor and down into northern Monmouth County. So certainly the Hurricane Center is kind of looking at this and looking at all the models with the westward tracks and thinking, you know what, we better make sure we got at least some kind of watch up in the western areas in case we have to do any kind of radical westward shift. What I would look for over the next 24 hours is, does it move? The initial motion is going to, now that it's turned northward, is probably going to be, or at least the way it's modeled, it's going to be north-northeast or east of due north, maybe 010 or 020 degrees. And then you get that hook back where it goes back to a 360 motion and then maybe to a 330 motion as it is approaching the coast of Long Island. Now, if we start to see that return back to a 360 motion happening sooner, that'll be a clue that the upper low is beginning to have a very strong influence on this and that you could see a turn to the left a bit sooner. So keep an eye on that. Watch the loops and pay attention to these advisories in terms of what they're using for movement. Direction and speed, particularly if you look on the marine advisory or even on the public advisory, they give you the movement in degrees. So if you start to see it go 020, 010, 360, 350, doing it, if that starts to happen before it crosses, say, 35 or 36 north, that's a telling sign that maybe that this is going to wind up shifting a bit to the left. Now, here these are the 18Z tracking models. Joe, just like I was saying, you see those, they got the three models that go western Long Island, New York City, and then into Monmouth County in New Jersey. Then there's this big gap. That's not a short distance, by the way. It's 47 miles from Midtown Manhattan to Islip. So let's round it off and call it 50 miles. There's a 50-mile gap here where there are no landfalls, models showing landfalls. And then you got a whole bunch of them, virtually all of them, except for one, making a landfall over the eastern half of Suffolk County on Long Island, and those all take it northwestward into Connecticut. You just got one that goes straight north into Rhode Island and then swings over into eastern Massachusetts. The 0Z's not going to be out probably for another 45 minutes or so. If we're still yapping away, we'll give it a check before we go off the air. The intensity models, as we take a look at Henri's intensity models, this particular switch from 12 to 18, 12Z to 18Z has actually gotten slightly more bullish in that it's pushed up one model back up into a high-grade category 2. I mean, that might be pushing it, but you see that virtually all of them go category 1. And at 48 hours, which would be 1 o'clock in the afternoon on Tuesday. So you start to see the downslope, Sunday. 1 o'clock in the afternoon on Sunday. But you start to see the strength begin to wane off after Sunday morning as it's just offshore. So that's that's telling you probably the impacts of the cooler ocean. And then we go into a high-level a high-grade tropical storm, and then gradually weakening as we go through the rest of the day Sunday and into Sunday night. Mark G, thank you so much for the super chat hit. Most appreciated. Thank you. Wayne Stuckart, also thank you so much for the super chat hit. Very nice. Thank you. I'm left speechless, which is usually, something that I'm not.
We have a very great contingent of people who are not, one thing we haven't talked about, Joe, and I know this is maybe not the time to do it, but at least throw it out there. And maybe somebody on the chat board can make a suggestion. You're coming back next week, aren't you?
Yes.
And we've been touching here and there upon, having maybe a Joe and Joe, dare I say, convention, or a Joe and Joe get together
in some back alley. Yes.
I don't honestly know what and where to do this. Whether we could do it at a park or at a restaurants. They say if you want to have a party, be our guest, but you have to plunk down a certain amount of money in advance to reserve the tables in the room or whatever. But we don't really know how many people would come to such an affair anyway. So I don't know if there's some place in Westchester or Long Island or wherever that we can all convene. All the people on the chat board are splattered probably every which way. So I don't know. If it's convenient for some, it's going to be inconvenient probably.
Well, I'm up for
others.
I'm going to probably be up for about 2 weeks. So it'll be we have a little bit of time to figure it out. And actually, if we take a day off next week from doing the live stream, we can have a conversation into how we might be able to pull this off.
I know what. Let's everybody have. We'll all meet at my house, and Renato will be very happy to cook for all of you.
Oh, is she watching the show? Is she because you're going to hear the Macy's intercom go off after that statement if she's listening to this.
If she's listening, yes. Well, if she heard what I just said and goes on the intercom, she'll probably say something like over my dead body, not her dead body, but my dead body.
Right. All right. Let's.
Our great mutual friend, who is now probably watching this from the great beyond, Bob Wolf. For many years, Bob was the announcer for the New York Rangers hockey team. And there was one night when Bob Wolf called up his wife and said, "We're going to have a few people over for dinner." And she said, "Oh, okay. How much meat? How much should I get?" He says, "Well, you may have to get a little bit more than usual. I've invited the entire Ranger hockey team to our house for dinner."
Oh, God.
Oh, Lordy.
Oh, too funny.
Yeah, she's watching. Oh, she's watching from the German club.
Oh.
Renata, every Friday night, Renata goes to the German club in Putnam Valley, right off of Kramer's Pond Road, for a schluck. She gets together with a few of the other German folks up there, and she has a couple of beers or a schluck and whatever like that, and they talk. So she's probably watching this right now from the German club. So she cannot get on the intercom, Joe, and say, "Over your dead body, you're not bringing the whole people from the Joe and Joe chat board to our house for dinner."
All right. You're safe for now. WPC rainfall amounts. They just freshened this map up a little while ago, Joe. They beefed it up a little bit. They've got 1.5 inches back to just about to New York City and up the Hudson River. And they've got some big amounts in Vermont, southern Vermont, western Mass, most of Connecticut, eastern Long Island. I don't know. I'm thinking they seem to be favoring more the east side of the track, and that's where I probably would disagree with them. I think there probably would be more to the west. But this is a hard forecast to do in terms of figuring out rainfall amounts. It's not an easy thing at this point. given the variables, like, as mentioned earlier. I think that upper low is a big player. Is going to be a big player in terms of rainfall amounts, both downstate and upstate. Was it? Let's see. I know there was a question. I think it was Ray G asking about upstate, and we were talking. I was talking earlier. Having had this conversation with Timothy Beltman, it's going to be. This upper low is going to make a difference if the storm reacts with the upper low the way some of these models are showing. That's going to really impact the potential for rainfall further north. This whole scenario is just so darn strange. Here's the GFS surface, by the way, on the last run, which is what Joe was alluding to. A couple of things that struck me here, Joe, is the fact that it gets the pressure down to a 979 when it's east of New Jersey at 39.12 and just about 71.8 west. And then on the next, and that's at 2 a.m. At 8 a.m., it's at 40.23. So let's say 40.2 and 72.1. It's not moving very fast. It's going from, let me just do some quick math. So 39.1, and then the next one 6 hours later is 40.2. So it's only moved about 1 degree north in 6 hours. That's only 10 or 11 miles an hour.
Right.
How is this not going to weaken faster? Although the pressure does come up, it only comes up 5 millibars to 984. And then it's a 991, which is on the other side, sitting over New Haven. Crosses the Twin Forks near Riverhead, or maybe just east of Riverhead, going northwest. And you can see that area of heavy rain, the yellow and the brown and the red in western Connecticut. There's some hilly terrain over there with this thing going in that direction. And I just wonder whether that might, open up the sky with the torrential downpours on a track like this going northwestward. And even when if it gets up into the northwestern corner of Connecticut, Joe, there's this big precip max sitting on the New York State side, probably on where 87 and 90 intersect, that whole section in there. This is going to be, I'm starting to wonder I'm starting to think that this may wind up being a bit dicey rainfall-wise in areas up to the north in upstate New York. Because then it loops and moves out.
What may very well happen is that we may be looking at, we're talking about two camps, one trying to bring it to eastern Long Island, the other to New York Harbor. Well, maybe we'll have a hybrid of both. We'll have the storm pass across central or east central Long Island, and then when it goes inland across Connecticut, that's when it will make the turn to the north and west over the mid and upper Hudson River Valley, dousing that area with quite a bit of heavy rain. And then finally it'll loop and make the turn out to the north and east either on Monday or Tuesday. And Kenneth Rosenberg brings up latest 18Z ECMWF European has yet again shifted east, no longer shows a Long Island landfall. It's also good deal slower prior to landfall than 12Z. Joe, I've got that 18Z run on the screen share, so if you want to throw it over to me. It's go over. And we'll show you.
I would just be really careful with the European because we've only had one run where it even made some sense, given what was going on. So I would be really cautious, and I would not. I certainly wouldn't change a forecast over one run of any model, let alone the European right now.
All right. Well, here's 8 o'clock this evening. Here's 2 o'clock in the morning. Here's 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. Now, where in the world did they get this diamond shape? You see this? Yes. I mean, I've heard of convective feedback before, but that is a little bit taking it, to the limit. If this were to happen, this one spot here would probably be getting something on the order of 8/10 of an inch to 1 inch of rain.
That's a big
6-hour time frame.
The European is telling you there's a Bitcoin mine in the western side of the Catskills.
Yeah.
Go on.
2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. And you could see that much of tomorrow, for most of the area, it'll be humid, but at least it should be fairly dry. Now here comes our old friend Henri. This is as of 8 o'clock tomorrow night. And again, this is the interpretation of the 18Z run of the European. Here now we have 2 a.m. on Sunday morning. Here is 8 a.m. on Sunday morning. And here is 2 p.m. on Sunday. So, I don't know why it is that, it gets so
that doesn't look to me like
disheveled.
this, Joe. That doesn't look to me like the center is past is east of Long Island. I know I'm looking at this on a small screen here right now.
No.
Am I seeing things?
Well, at 2 o'clock in the afternoon,
Yeah, it goes
it's
over
got this
eastern Long Island.
It has an elongated look.
It
But the middle
weakens
of the
it.
elongation,
It weakens it, but it
No,
doesn't.
but
It doesn't go east and go east of the Twin Forks.
No, and in fact, now take a look at what happens after 2 o'clock in the afternoon. At 8 o'clock in the evening, the storm is now up here near Worcester, I guess, Worcester, or approaching maybe Springfield or somewhere out there. But now at 60 hours, which is 2 o'clock in the morning on Monday morning, now it looks like the storm is turning back to the west.
That's the upper low. That's the upper low. That's the big variable here is this upper low and this cutoff, and in so many different ways. And here's another argument. Here's another argument for the case of maybe a big heavy rainfall in western Connecticut, northwestern Connecticut, western Massachusetts, and on the New York side as well.
Correct. And then it kind of just sits and lays there, it seems.
Well, there's no kicker.
The upper low itself is the upper low just sits there, yeah, and then you get like this. I know the GFS was saying that by 12Z on Tuesday, this big zone, here's the big zone of clear dry weather it's supposed to move in, but the European is kind of like languishing with the leftover. Yes, with the leftover moisture into early Tuesday. So there you go.
Okay, so let's come back full screen and let's address this question because it's come up a few times. I've seen a few people mention it on comments on last night's video, on last night's live stream that we did. The storm surge and coastal flooding, and I'm going in my own mind with the idea that the storm surge that they're forecasting is a 2 to 4 foot storm surge. I believe the high tides. I shouldn't. Before I quote, I don't want to give misinformation. I have to recheck the times of the tides. I looked at them before, and now I've completely forgot what the times were. But the storm surge and coastal flooding on the south shore of Long Island, and also for exposed areas in southern and southeastern New England, I think will be the areas that will be from where the center is eastward. If you're west of the track of the center, I do think will there be some coastal flooding? Probably, but I think it shouldn't be anything too out of control. Am I right here?
Well,
with the north wind and everything else on the west side.
Actually, you know what I did? I during the day on Sunday, I had the winds coming more from the northwest, maybe northeast late tomorrow night and into early Sunday morning. But then I have the wind shifting over to a more north or northwest direction. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Remember that in Sandy, because of the unusual track that Sandy took into central New Jersey, we were exposed to a roaring south and southeast wind, which pushed a lot of the water onshore and caused all of the cataclysmic flooding that we did see. But this, again, is going to be more of a northerly or a northwesterly wind during Sunday as the storm passes by.
Right.
The one fact that we do have to worry about is the fact that we do have a full moon. So the tides are going to be, even without a storm, astronomically higher than than they normally would be because of the tug or pull of the moon. And actually, Joe, we've mentioned this before, there's a tidal lag. Even though the full moon appears on Sunday.
Right, the peak tides are not for a couple of days.
Right, for Monday or Tuesday. So that in a way is a bit of a saving grace. It's still not going to be a cakewalk on Sunday. But I don't think it's going to be a horrendously bad situation. There will be flooding. There will be a bit of beach erosion, I'm sure. And I'm sure that some folks are going to be going through a problematic period on Sunday and Sunday night. But it's not going to be, if people are saying like, is it going to be another Sandy? No, I don't think it's going to be another Sandy.
The only thing I will add to that is that if somehow we wind up with a hook to the left where the center goes into New York Harbor or, even into Northeast New Jersey, as a couple of those stray models were showing, if you wind up with something like that, I think that opens up the possibility of some potentially serious flooding along the South Shore. But you have to have the track go in to the west so that you can, basically what you're doing is you're piling all the water between the storm track and the shoreline because of the because of the 90-degree angle, New Jersey, New York City, Long Island. So if you wind up taking something in like this, okay, here's Long Island and here's the track going this way, the water is going to be trapped inside that V, then you're going to have a serious problem. But if you're talking about something coming up this way, I mean, this is high-tech stuff I'm doing here with my hands. But if you're having something coming up this way, your water issue is going to be here, okay? So, they always tell you, don't focus on the center, don't focus on the center. But you know what? If you live on the coast and coastal flooding is a problem, focus on the center to help you with figuring out the situation with regards to coastal flooding. Somebody's bringing up wind issues. So I got that. I just happen to have the 10-meter wind on the GFS. So let's take a look at that. Actually, I rolled through this while you were doing while you had the board before. I was a little surprised at how robust this was because it brings in the 40 to 50 knot winds, the sustained winds Sunday morning over the Twin Forks and actually just west of Riverhead. The yellow is 30 knots. Again, this is sustained, and that goes pretty deep into Suffolk County, almost to the Nassau line, and of course all over the coastal waters, Long Island Sound, South Shore of Long Island. Now remember, it's out here on this side, folks, on this side of the center, your winds are coming up down from the north. This is what I was saying before about with respect to coastal flooding. Your issues for coastal flooding are going to be here on the east side, the shores of Rhode Island, southeastern Massachusetts, and into Long Island Sound, where there could be, some coastal flooding issues, even if the track winds up being more to the east than to the west. And then by 2 o'clock in the afternoon, with the center sitting probably over New Haven, is my estimate, you're in that 40. Look at that red, Joe, is all 40 to 50 knot winds over the eastern half of Long Island from the west. So, and again, if we're getting 40 to 50 knots sustained, there probably will be gusts to 60 or 70 if that's the case.
Yeah, and in fact, even for New York City, Joe, for New York City, I said for the first half of the day on Sunday, let's say from sunrise to about noon or shortly thereafter, in New York City, I'm thinking northwest winds averaging sustained speeds of 15 to 20 miles per hour with occasional gusts to gale force up to about maybe 40 miles an hour in New York City. So even though New York is a good 150 or 200 miles west of the storm center, if the projections for an eastern landfall, eastern Long Island landfall are correct, even though they're that far away to the west, I think New York City is still going to get some rather significant winds during at least the first part of the day, Sunday, before things start to quiet down Sunday afternoon. And that will be surely because by that time the storm will have moved inland over Connecticut and get the wind knocked out of it, so to speak, and the winds will be forced to diminish. But it will still, and if we get some showery rains on Sunday morning, even in New York, there'll be windswept showery rains. And yes, there could be a few rumbles of thunder as well. They're trying to predict just how much rain is going to fall in a system like this is difficult, partially because we don't know the exact track, but also partially because we're dealing with, in many cases, convective precipitation. So there could be some bands of very heavy showers in some spots, which dump a lot of rain. Other spots may be in the bands between the heavy bands, the area between the heavy rain activity. And, New York, you could still, I said at the start of the show, with some of the other storms that have passed across eastern Long Island in the past, even in New York, they picked up like 2.5, 3 inches of rain. That could very well be the case on Sunday. And of course, even greater amounts. I see Joe has on the screen now that shade of purple. That is indicative of what, Joe? Like 4, 5, 6 inches.
That's 2 to 6, from light color to the darker color. If you look in Northwest Connecticut, that's probably a 5 to 6 inch, area of rain that the GFS is indicating there. And even up again, I'm going up to the Hudson Valley. You see all that the darker purples there. That's 3 or 4 inches of rain that's being indicated up. Again,
Right.
all predicated with respect to the upper low. By the way, my pal Jason Nappy, who works at who's the big cheese at a TV station down in Lafayette. Jason, I forgot the call letter, so if you want to throw them on the in the conversation, go ahead. But he said he made a point. He said that the Northeast we're getting all we're getting all the storms this year. This is our second one, as opposed to Louisiana, which hasn't seen any this year, at least not yet. I mean, because last year.
And Timothy Veltman.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well,
go ahead.
Tim, on the chat board, I didn't see this response is to, but I think Tim Veltman said D, none of the above. It was a toss up between Irene and Floyd. So I think somebody asked Timothy Veltman about what is the worst or heaviest amount of rain or flooding conditions with any kind of tropical cyclone. And Tim, I'd have to agree with you, at least in the Hudson Valley. Floyd, for many years, when I was working at News 12, I started at News 12 Westchester in 1995. We had Floyd in 1999, and thereafter, we always used Floyd as the benchmark for heavy, heavy rain. Parts of the Hudson Valley with Floyd, and also portions of New Jersey as well, picked up in excess of a foot of rain in really just only a few hours' time with Floyd. But then in 2011, it's 12 years after Floyd, look what came along, Irene, and Irene dumped a similarly heavy amount of rain. We did not have the weather station here set up yet at my house, Joe, but Renata had a jug, what we would have, soft, like iced tea or maybe lemonade. And it went up to about 12 inches. She left the jug outside on the table on the back patio just as Irene was entering the picture for us. And the following morning, the jug was overflowing with water, which tells me that we had over a foot of rain with Irene. So Irene and Floyd are the two big storms that have brought a tremendous amount of rain. I remember Floyd took a path more or less right across the New York City metropolitan area. I don't remember exactly. I think Irene was, I'm not sure now if Irene was west of New York or just east of New York, but also came pretty close to New York City. And again, we picked up a tremendous amount of rain. And in both cases, the models didn't even account for that. So, we're looking now at a landfalling hurricane, eastern Long Island, maybe up into Connecticut. We're looking at numbers like 2 to 4, 5 to 6 at most, or whatever like that. Who's to say that we might not see? And I hope this doesn't turn out to be the case, but who's to say that before this is all over said and done, somebody either on Long Island or in Connecticut or maybe the Hudson Valley indeed ends up with another 8 to 10 or 8 to 12 inches of rain? Not out of the question. The key to all of this is when you have a tropical system like this coming onshore, frictional drag. It's like literally taking a giant sponge and squeezing every little bit of moisture out. And every little bit of moisture in this case could very well turn out to be more than just a few inches of rain. We'll see what the final story will be by late Sunday and Monday, certainly.
Right. James Brown, full moon, high tide, extreme flooding Sunday morning. As Joe pointed out, the peak tides actually don't come for another 2 days after that. Not to say that they won't be high. There are, as we talked about earlier, track means everything. If this winds up tracking, over eastern crossing over the eastern part of Long Island, the western part of Long Island, and the New Jersey shore, certainly. We should also mention about the fact that the New Jersey shore, I really don't think there's going to be much coastal flooding at all there, because they're just too far west, and they're going to have a northwest wind. If we have a situation where the storm goes into New York Harbor, as I said earlier, then it's a different ball game. We're not forecasting that right now, but it's important for coastal people to sort of bear in mind with the variability that we're seeing with the models, that if we do see a shift in the track further to the west, it could become more problematic. But I just don't, I'm not anticipating this happening at the moment. I pulled up the 500, Joe, again, because we've been saying it's all about the upper low. The upper low, you see it there, closed off in West Virginia. Right here's the upper low. And usually when you think about it, folks, when you've seen it in the past, you usually see the upper low, with a lot of height lines closed off. Okay. In this particular instance, it's not that strong. It's just this little cutoff low, but it's enough. And here, of course, is your tropical system. Here is Henri and your Atlantic ridge that's building northwestward. And it's almost empty flow. I mean, I'm looking at these upper winds here. They're not that strong. They're like 10 knots, 15 knots from the southeast off the East Coast. So, here's the path of least resistance is right between the two. But remember, that assumes a static atmosphere. The upper low moves into eastern Virginia, and then it just sort of merges with the coastal storm, and it just pinwheels up and around. So very, very subtle differences here are going to make huge differences for somebody. And as far as that rain for parts, well inland in Connecticut, upstate New York, and you look at the bullseye at 500 that you're seeing up there. So there might be some weird things that are going to come out of this.
You got to remember that what we're looking at for the most part are global models. And on the overall scheme of things, when you talk about a difference of, let's say, 25 or 50 miles on a global scale, that's nothing. That's a drop in the bucket. And most of the time when we make our forecast, we say, oh, big deal, 25, 50 miles. But this is one of those cases tomorrow night and into Sunday. This is one of those cases where 25 or 50 miles is going to make all the difference in the world between what you're going to see. And therein lies the problem, I guess. And when you're going from a 12-kilometer North American model to a 3-kilometer, I think honestly that then that's too tight. That actually, it's like micromanaging, so to speak, and trying to draw the system into a crazier type or more extreme type of a turn. I don't think you could use that. Well, look, last night, what were we talking about, Joe? How the 3-kilometer NAM was saying what for the storm in Millibar, something ridiculous like 933,
933, 914, something.
914, So there's the problem too when you have too tight a grid, and maybe 50 or 100 years from now, maybe they'll be laughing at us. Maybe the people who do synoptic weather forecasts will look back and saying, look what those poor people had to do back in 2020 or whatever, because they had to look at all of these models and they got all confusing or whatever. And maybe by 2071 or maybe 2121, they'll be using the universal meteorological model. Everybody will be looking or making forecast off of just one single model. There won't be any differences or deviations. They'll just say, all right, here's the weather from the universal metro model. Don't be surprised if that happens. I mean, that's I'm saying like maybe that's 100 years from now, but who would have thought 100 years ago that we'd be making weather forecasts using the technology that we're using right now?
Yep. More tip jar hits. The super chat tip jar. The chairman hitting super chat as he gets ready. He's just finished his training for his COVID job that he's resuming in September. Please be safe, Mr. Scott. And Ken DPW on the board tonight, hitting super chat. So most appreciated. Thank you thank you so much with regards to that. I've got the recon up because we got enough data in this from them. And a couple of things. First off, the pressure is 995, which is what they found. You'll notice the satellite image that's laid behind the grid that there is not that much on the north and northwest side, at least not yet. And this is due to the fact of all that northerly shear over the last couple of days certainly took its toll. Now, going northeast, when the plane went northeast, I'm seeing a few wind barbs showing winds of 55 to 60 knots. So that would justify at least 60 to 65 miles an hour. Let's see what they find when they make the full turnaround and get more data in there. So far, it seems like, at least it's consistent. It seems to be relatively consistent with the advisory. But we're going to have to, if this is going to strengthen, we're going to need to see that low-level center get more tucked in. It's starting to get tucked in underneath that central dense overcast, but going to need to do it a bit more. It's amazing how shear can take a storm, and sometimes it can shear it to a point where it's almost beyond repair.
It gets very difficult. It's not like a starfish. It's not like
right.
It's not like, okay, if we lose an arm, we'll gain it back, and it may even turn out to be even better than it was before. Sometimes you're right. When you get a shear, the system gets sheared to a point where it just simply cannot come back together as good as it was. I was just, while you were talking, Joe, I went to my bookshelf because I was looking. Somebody here mentioned on the chat board the 1938 hurricane. And I've got dozens of different books on meteorology and astronomy, and I just simply cannot find it. But there was a book that was written by somebody here on Long Island that details a beautiful chronology of what the 38 storm and how it developed and what it did. But again, before you start making comparisons between this storm and the 38 storm, as Joe pointed out about 10 or 15 minutes ago, this is moving very slowly.
Yeah, no, there's no comparison.
It's
no
totally
different
whatsoever. The 38 storm was zooming along at like 40 or 50 miles an hour. In fact, the 38 storm was moving so fast and may have been like a category 2, but with the forward speed, it hit with more like a category 3 or 4. It was moving so fast it actually created Shinnecock Inlet. It actually cut right through the island there and produced that strip there. So there's not going to be any comparison. People saying, "So is it going to be another Sandy?" No, it's not. Is this going to be another 38 hurricane? No, it's not. It's going to be it's like snowflakes, Joe. Each hurricane, regardless of how similar they may look initially, they're like snowflakes. They're not exactly alike.
I'm just reading some of the comments here. Jared Bush, it's coming into 84-degree water off Long Island. Really? No. 74, yes. 84, no. Listen, if it was 84-degree water, you'd see me in it. But no, 74, not 84. And I'm not understanding Mr. Brown saying that shear is not a factor. It has been a factor for the last few days, so I'm not sure where you're saying it's not a factor, because if shear hadn't been a factor, this would probably be a Cat 4 by now. But shear is a factor, and it has relaxed some, but We're still waiting to see some evidence of strengthening. It'll come. It'll probably strengthen, later on tonight, and it has all day Saturday. It has until it gets to about 37 degrees north before which is where it'll come out of the Gulf Stream. Runs into the Gulf Stream around 34, 35 north, and then it comes out of it at about 36 and a half, 37. So it's got time. It has at least 20 for the next 24 hours to rev up. But 24 hours is not a whole lot of time. It'll be enough to get it down, get it to a Category 1, and possibly maybe a low-grade Cat 2 if everything lines up perfectly. I was just checking to see, because we're coming up on 20 of 9, so usually around between now and 9 o'clock, we get the 0Z model track guidance. And so far, Joe, it is not there. So, and if we were on, as you said the other day, if we were on standard time, the new NAM would be starting in about 5 minutes.
Correct.
But it's not starting for another hour and 5 minutes. And I can tell you that most assuredly, we will not be on for another hour and 5 minutes to wait for it, because I don't have the strength to it.
Now, tomorrow night, are we going to be on our normal schedule, or maybe later or earlier?
We need to discuss this when we're done. I'm not sure. I'm not sure yet. I've got a few things I have to do tomorrow, so I'm not sure yet in terms of the time. How's your schedule tomorrow?
Yeah, it's pretty wide open. We did a couple of things. Renata cleaning off the top of our obnoxiously large swimming pool, the checking the filter. We're running out of chlorine. I don't know if you're aware, but there's a chlorine shortage this year. Yes. And then we changed the filter because we have well water. So we have to change the filter in the water closet. And that hadn't been changed in a while. So, oh my goodness, I just realized. Oh, the one thing I had to do, we have a chart and we have to write down when we change the filter last and make reference to it when we change the filter again. And I didn't make the reference that we changed it today. So as soon as the show is over, that's what I have to do. So see the things you have to do when you live out in the country, folks.
Oliver. Well, I picked some tomatoes today because they were ripening. They were ripened on the vine.
Oh, they're ripening up. They're going crazy. We have a lot of cherry tomatoes and regular sized tomatoes, and on top of that, when my kids were away on their honeymoon, Renata was running over to their house and picking all of their tomatoes. So, we're up to our what's in tomatoes, Joe.
Yeah, but that's not a bad thing. Christina Pedia wants to know if you have a generator.
Yes, we do have a generator. The one good and the good part about the generator is we can get practically everything in this big house of ours to turn on. But when we turn on with the generator, the one thing we don't have is the internet. We don't have cable TV. We don't have the ability to make a phone call. We have to do it with our cell phones. So there's some good. There's good and there's also bad when you even when you have the electricity. It's amazing how we all rely. Like in the good old days, you get electricity back. Oh, no big deal. Now we can watch TV. Can't do that anymore. Especially if you have cable.
Right. Or if you're streaming off the internet, which is what I'm doing.
Correct.
Mark G made me chuckle because he asked, where's Sal Blandino right now? and Mark G and Joe, I have a better question. Where's Smadamat?
Smadamat.
Remember?
Another one that left.
Right.
And now, of course, Mr. Reuben Fairchild.
Mr. Reuben Fairchild is it. We've been doing shows that we haven't taken a break in a while. We're doing shows every night. I'm doing double video. I'm doing actually triple videos because I do my usual weather in 5, which is theoretically supposed to be 5 days and 5 minutes. Okay, and it never is because I have to just keep talking until I can't talk anymore. So they rarely run 5 minutes. They often run closer to 7, 8, or even 10 minutes. Well, weather in 5 in the last few days has been anywhere between 15 and 20 minutes with all the weather that's been going on and with these tropical systems. So
Right.
I've been doing those. I've been doing an extra weather in 10 that turns into a weather in 20 for on my subscription platform on Patreon. So by the time we get to 9 o'clock, when we basically by the time we get to this time of the night, I'm on my third show. Okay, and what, I don't have a producer. I mean, I'm doing everything myself. So it just I'm exhausted. I'm exhausted. I'm sitting here, refreshing the screen off camera, waiting for this thing to say 0Z because I'm dying to see the 0Z plots. But they're just not here, Joe. They're not here. So why don't we do this? Let's for folks that joined in late, because I'm pretty much in line with what you said at the beginning of the program. Why don't you put up your incredibly high-tech graphic that you created to make it look like you hand drew it? Really, it should get awards. It's so good.
You know what? You know what somebody said? He said, "I love that old school graphic or that old school map."
By the way,
and I got to tell you.
I just want to ask you really quick. Are you calling this up the way I told you to bring it up on this? You do the Control O, and you bring up. Okay. So why don't you go to? You see, you're on the upper corner. You've got those 3 little dots or those 4 little dots on the upper corner of your browser. So click on that and go to Zoom, and zoom and hit the plus sign so we can make it a little bigger on the screen. Beautiful. Oh, it's the artwork here is just astounding. Yeah, it's good. It's good. I'm going to widen it out so that everybody can see. So anyway, go ahead.
Well, as we said at the top of the show, and I'll say now, I guess, to close the show, this is a map that I plotted based upon. It's a consensus. I looked at all of the model runs and found that we had some model runs like the Canadian Global and Icon German, and I even took a look, Joe, at the HRRR and the Futurecast, which is the RPM model. All of those models turn the storm sharply to the left and into, well, New York Harbor, White Plains, that thing. But the 3 models that we have been using for a good number of years, the European, the GFS, and the NAM 12 kilometer. By the way, the NAM 3 kilometer was among those that made that sharp turn to the left or to the west. But I, basically, took it upon myself to use the 3 models, GFS, NAM 12, European model, and drew up this consensus track for Hurricane Henri. And the consensus shows that the storm will be working its way first north-northwest, north-northeast, then almost straight due north, and then eventually coming to the slightly north-northwest track, making a landfall maybe somewhere across the Twin Forks of Long Island, and then across Long Island Sound and on into east central Connecticut, maybe around New London, Connecticut. That would come late morning or early afternoon on Sunday. By 8 p.m. on Sunday, the storm has weakened back to a tropical system, a tropical storm. It may maintain that up until 8 a.m. on Monday, but eventually will become a post-tropical system as it moves into Maine later Monday and Monday night. As I also mentioned, it may very well be that this may turn out to be a hybrid of all of the models, that perhaps the storm track pretty much will go along this track here up until about later Sunday. And then instead of going almost due north, it may actually spin off and go this way to the northwest into the middle and upper Hudson Valley, possibly dumping a copious amount of rain in northwestern Connecticut and the mid and upper Hudson Valley, and then doing that loop like some of the models have been doing with this for the last few days, and looping it back to the east and northeast up across lower sections of Maine by later Monday or Tuesday. Whatever. I'm pretty confident, Joe. I'm pretty confident that we're going to see the track match up fairly well up until about here, up until about it reaches eastern Long Island. And then after that, well, maybe all bets are off. Maybe it'll go north and up into central New England, or maybe just maybe it will take that track to the northwest and that big loop and then sweep away to the north and east. We brought up one storm many, many years ago, 60 years ago, in fact, in 1961, Hurricane Esther.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, I think I have that track here. Hang on for a second. And we'll show you. If you want to see a loop, folks, let's see. Do I have Esther? Yes, I do have Esther here. There you go. There you go. There's Hurricane Esther, Joe. And this too was caught by an upper low. And this system came up and then did a complete counterclockwise, did a clockwise loop like this, looped around, and then eventually looped up into central and northern New England and Canada, where it died. That was 60 years ago. And who knows, maybe Henri is trying to commemorate Esther by maybe possibly doing a loop on its own sometime later Sunday or Monday. We shall have to wait and see.
All right. I just checked. I'll check one more time because I think last night around this time they popped in. Let me look. The intensity guidance came in first. And nope, not in yet. And the plots, nope, not in yet. So we're coming up on 8:51. We've been on for an hour and 20 minutes. I think we've pretty well said everything we could say with regards to this. So Joe and I will be back at some point tomorrow. If we go in the morning tomorrow, Joe, I might be able to get a special guest.
A special guest.
Yes. So if we do it, if we go sometime tomorrow morning, but I know that you you sleep in. We'll use that in quotes. You sleep in. So I will leave that up to you. It's actually what's a sensible hour? The crack of noon.
First of all, I don't sleep in on Saturday mornings because, Joe, at 9 o'clock on MeTV, 9 a.m. on Saturday morning, we have the Bugs Bunny Show.
Speaking of which, on the lights. But
this is it.
I have that video in my computer. I can bring it up and play it any time. So just so just be aware. I was watching last night on Boomerang. At night, they have a Looney Tunes hour. And I saw a couple of cartoons, and they were unedited. They were, adult. One was was a coyote was the Road Runner, and it was pretty funny. And another one was a Daffy and Porky, where they both own Western saloons.
Last Saturday they had the one. They had the one last Saturday with Daffy, Elmer, and Bugs, where Elmer says to Daffy and Bugs, I hunt for the sport of it.
Right.
And Daffy suddenly appears and says, anyone for tennis? But that's also the one where Bugs says to Elmer, he said, for shame, Doc, hunting rabbits with an elephant gun. And then all of a sudden the elephant comes.
You do, and I'll give you such a pinch. Was that I wonder if that was a reach out to Joe Besser, because he used to play. It had to be because he was stinky. Yeah,
right. And he later was one of the third stooge. He was the next to last third stooge. He came after Shemp died, and before they replaced Joe Besser with Joe DeRita,
right,
or Curly Joe. But there was a few episodes of the Three Stooges where Joe Besser was a stooge, And I just want to tell you, you're so silly.
Yeah, Luca Costello said that Joe Besser was the only one that could make him lose it in the middle of when they were when they were filming something.
Right.
Lou Costello always was able to hold, even in some, the funnier moments, never came out of character, but Joe Besser would just break him up. So that would be
the earlier equivalent of a Harvey Korman, Tim Conway.
Yeah, that's a good comparison. Yeah, and actually, when you think about it physically, they could have played Abbott and Costello the parts. Tim Conway playing Lou, well, to an extent, at least physically, they certainly could have.
Also, Jack Benny and George Burns. George Burns said, I could break Jack Benny up anytime, and he could. Every time Jack Benny was with George Burns, he would just sometimes fall on the floor laughing. There was a story once where they were at a party, and Jack Benny had a little piece of white thread on his lapel. Mm-hmm. So George Burns says, you don't mind, I'd like to borrow this. And he took the little piece of white thread and he put it on his own lapel, and that broke Jack Benny up. The next day or the next morning, George Burns took the little white thread, he put it in a little box, and he mailed it to Jack Benny and says, thanks for letting me borrow this last night. And a few days later, Mary Benny or Mary Livingston calls up George Burns and says, the thread just arrived an hour ago. Jack is still on the floor. I think when he stops laughing, I'll divorce him.
Oh, too funny. That's too funny. Oh, God. Oh, well.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what, Joe, if you can get that special guest to come on with us tomorrow in the morning, I'll be ready for that.
Okay.
I think I know who the special guest is.
Nah, it's not who you think it is. I don't think it's who you think it is. It's another special guest. Anyway, I will.
Darn it.
Yeah, I know. But I'm working on it. So anyway, all right, everybody. Everyone, those of you who hit the super chat tip jar, thank you so much. Incredible tonight. Thank you so much. Joe and I really do appreciate it, because this is how we earn our living these days. And what? Yes.
A big bow to everybody on the chat board.
So keep an eye for your notifications tomorrow morning in terms of a show. I'll probably, if we do wind up doing something tomorrow morning, I'll give at least a half-hour window to get everybody a chance to get on, maybe even as much as an hour if I find out early enough. Okay? Otherwise, stay safe, and we'll see you tomorrow. Nighty-night, everybody.
Bye-bye.